My name is Ruth, and this is my story about how I fell in love. Although I would never have guessed that it would have happened like this, to be honest. It all started many years ago when I was a little girl. My parents were always fighting over money. You see, my mother had a bit of a gambling problem and would constantly go to the casino and spend most of my father's paycheck. Things were so bad that sometimes we would have to skip meals in order to have money for other bills. It was terrible, and it only got worse when my father left one day and never came back. I can't say that I blame him, really. After all, my mother was bleeding him dry, and so long as she was in his life, he would never be free from poverty. Although once my father was gone, my mother was forced to get a job, but even though she was making good money, we were still struggling since she still spent most of what she made at the casino. Once I was old enough to work, she demanded that I get a job and help out. I barely ever got to keep any of what I earned, as she would take it all and spend it. I was furious, of course, but there wasn't anything I could do. If I said anything, then she would start throwing things at me and start slapping me, until I relented and stopped asking. As I was nearly finished with high school, my mother pulled me aside and gave me one of the strangest lectures I had ever received.
Listen, Ruth, you are almost 18 now. That means that you are old enough to find a man and get married, but not just any man. We need to find someone wealthy for you to marry so that all of our money problems can be solved.
But Mom, I don't want to get married. I'm too young.
Oh, that's nonsense. You're more than old enough to get married. I was only 19 when I had you after all. So 18 isn't really all that unusual. Just find someone with money and do it. Or I'll find you someone and then you won't have a choice in the matter.
I knew that it wasn't an empty threat. There was only so much time before she forced me to marry whoever she picked out, and knowing her, it would be someone she owed money to. I didn't know what I could do to stop her. I mean, I knew that I didn't actually have to marry someone she picked out. She couldn't actually force me into a relationship I didn't want to be in, but I knew that if I didn't do it, that it would anger her, and I didn't know what would happen then. I had no money to live on my own, and I had no other family that would let me stay with them. Without any better idea, though, I decided to just put all my efforts into getting good grades and applying for scholarships. I figured that if I got into a great school, that she would maybe change her mind, since I would be making good money once I graduated. A few months later, I received a letter in the mail that said that I got a full scholarship to our local college for their business program. I was so excited and couldn't wait to go. The only problem was that I would still have to pay for my books and school supplies, and I would need money in order to do so. I knew that my mother wouldn't help me out, so I started tutoring high school seniors to help pay my bills. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was more than enough, and I met some very amazing people as well. One of which, Andrew, made me feel weak in the knees. He was so incredibly handsome and very smart. I often wondered why he needed tutoring at all, but I was just grateful that he did so, that I could meet him. Things were going great for me, at least until I heard my mother talking to someone on the phone, and what they were talking about worried me.
Yes, I understand that I borrowed a lot of money from you, but I just need a little more time to pay you back.
No, you don't understand. You've taken far too long to pay me back, and I won't take any excuses. I know that you're poor and have no money, so how do you plan on reimbursing me?
Well, I don't know. I could maybe work for you.
Ah, you work for me? You're a useless idiot. I wouldn't want you for an employee. What about your daughter? I have a son that can't find a wife. If you marry your daughter to him, then I will agree to forget about your debt. Agreed?
I heard my mother agree to his idea and instantly grew very worried. Later that night, she started yelling at me.
Okay, enough is enough. Ruth, you are getting married. You aren't making any money by going to school, and we need money.
But Mom, I'll make very good money after I graduate. And we wouldn't need so much money if you would stop going to the casino and drinking so much. Plus, I still have my part-time job and tutoring. I could tell by the way that she was behaving that she had been drinking. I hated when she was like this. There was no reasoning with her.
That's nonsense. Those jobs don't pay enough. Now listen to me. You are going to drop out right now. And you are going to marry this boy that I found.
No, I won't. And what boy?
Don't you dare talk back to me. Just do as I say. I'm your mother and you will obey me, or else I'll kick you out and you'll have to live on the street. Is that what you want? To be a homeless idiot?
She was being so unreasonable, but I knew that she was fully willing to follow through with her threat. And so, I began to make plans to protect myself. The next day, I was tutoring Andrew, and he could tell that something was upsetting me.
Hey, Ruth. Is everything okay? You seem very distracted today.
Sorry, I'm just preoccupied with the way my mom threatened to kick me out.
Wait a minute. What does that mean?
I told him all about what my mother had said, and he began to chuckle.
Well, my family owns a few properties near the college, and I was going to be moving into one of them. If you don't mind being my roommate, then you can move there now and have the place to yourself until I start school in the fall. Then you'll be stuck living with me.
I blushed as the offer sounded wonderful to me. The idea of living with Andrew made me incredibly happy, but I also knew that I needed to keep calm and not let on that I was intrigued by his offer. In the end, though, I took him up on his offer. That night, I went home and began packing and left before my mom even noticed. Being in Andrew's family's house made me feel so incredibly free, and I knew that it had been the right choice, especially when Andrew began to visit me. He tried to make it look like he was just checking out his future living situation, but it had become obvious that he liked me, and the feelings were mutual. Just before school started, we began to date. For the first time in my life, I was able to save money instead of it all being taken by my mother. Then one day, there was a pounding on the door, and when I went to answer it, I saw my mother standing there with a very overweight man who was in his late 30s. I moved out, Mom. You were trying to force me to give up my future and quit school, so I left home.
Not more of this. You will listen to me, and you will marry this man and quit school right now.
No, I won't. And who is this man? He looks more than twice my age.
He's the son of a very wealthy merchant who I borrowed money from. I promised that you would marry him, and in exchange, the merchant will forgive my debt. I promised him that you would give him lots of sons as well.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, she is pretty. And so young, too. She'll make a good wife and mother.
Get your hands away from me. This will never happen. I am not your property, Mom. You can't just sell me off to someone to pay for your debt. You need to stop gambling and get help. Just then, Andrew came over, and once he saw my mother and a strange man, he was able to figure out what was going on and came to my aid.
Listen, lady. Ruth is an adult and can make her own decisions. You have no right to force her to do anything. Now get off my property before I call the police.
Andrew slammed the door in their faces and then waited to see if they would leave to see if he needed to call the police. Thankfully, they did leave, but that wasn't the last we saw of them. Over the next few weeks, my mother and that creepy guy came over almost every other day and would wait for me. Luckily, Andrew would warn me when they were around, and so I avoided speaking to them. On one occasion, Andrew went outside the house and saw them waiting and hiding, and noticed that they were holding rope and a large bag, and assumed that they intended to kidnap me and called the police. As soon as the police showed up, though, the two of them ran away before they could get caught. It went on like that all semester, which made focusing on my classes difficult. But I was determined, and so I did my best and maintained my good grades. At the end of the semester, Andrew suggested that we move to a different house that his parents owned, and under the cover of night, we did that. During the next couple of years, we kept moving around every time my mother found us, and eventually, I graduated and began looking for a full-time job. During that time, something unexpected happened. Andrew and I began to fall in love and started making plans for our future, which led to him buying an engagement ring. Just before my graduation, he proposed to me, and not long after he graduated, we were married. It was a small ceremony, but it was absolutely perfect, and we were so incredibly happy. As soon as we graduated and were married, his family gave us a very large amount of money as a wedding gift. It turned out that his family was incredibly wealthy, and with that money, we were able to start up our own business. After moving around so much, we knew a thing or two about houses, and so we started up our own realty firm. It was around that time that I found out that my mother had been forced to marry that creepy man. He had wanted someone younger, but since I was no longer an option, he accepted my mother as a consolation prize. From what I hear, he treats her terribly. And not only does he constantly cheat on her, but he is also verbally abusive too. Unfortunately for her, she can't leave him as she is so incredibly in debt and can't afford to divorce him. I don't think I've ever seen her so miserable in all my life. As for Andrew and I, we are doing very well with our company and have over 30 employees and are making more money than we could ever have imagined. Currently, we are making plans to buy a massive house as we plan to have lots of children to fill it with. Thanks for watching.